Hello everyone, I'm Riyadh, I'm the first big city.
And I'm Ontario, and I'm the second big city.
And together, this is
Big city, small talk. Hey everybody, welcome to Big
Hello
City Small
everyone.
Talk.
Yes, hello. It's good to be back.
Yes, it is. It's very good to be back.
Yeah, sorry about my absence last episode. I got sick the night before and I could not make it.
It's okay. We had a pretty good episode last week. Even though you weren't there, I think it still went pretty well.
Yeah. So, I wanted to begin this episode off just by giving a little anecdote about what happened at the climbing gym. So I go to climbing club, and we rock climb and boulder and stuff, right? And 2 hours into it, we were all exhausted. We were just huddled up and we were just talking, right? And there was this one of my friends was like, he was complaining about another kid in the school, and he was like, oh man, this kid just follows us around. He always repeats what we say, he's really like cringy, right? He doesn't like have his own like personality. He just leeches off of other people, right? And he was complaining about this, and I was like, well, what you have to realize is you have to be like sympathetic, right? You have to understand that this person is struggling. This is not like a conscious thing they're doing. It's like a struggle. It's a struggle for identity, right? What I said was, my response to that was, hey man, this kid that's like being annoying and stuff, he just doesn't have an identity, right? He really like, that's why he is like repeating after everyone, right? You have to find yourself before you find your people, and he hasn't found himself. So, and the consequence of that is him just going around and taking everyone else's personality, right?
Right.
And then the teacher was like, oh my God, Riyadh, that was so beautiful. He was like, where's this coming from? And I was like, oh, psychology. So yeah, I think that's like a good introduction on like the need for identity, right?
Right, and that ties into our big topic today, which is what is identity and how do you find your identity? So let's start there, and I'll ask you, Wadi, what is identity?
Not an easy question.
No, it's our
Not,
first hardball of the episode.
Yep, not an easy question. Identity, obviously, really broad word, right? But just to make it simpler, in simpler terms, just personality, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's your beliefs, it's your behavior, it's your I would say it's like 2 to 3 main things. It's how you take in stimuli, it's how you process that stimuli, and it's how you react to that stimuli, right?
So psychology.
Yeah. There's different words for that, but yeah. I think that everyone, if you put the two different people in the same scenario, same everything, they're gonna have like different outcomes because of those three things, right?
Mm.
So that is pretty simple, but it is like really like it varies through everyone out of the 8 billion people in the world,
I think I might disagree with you a little bit that identity is personality. I think identity is how you see yourself. Identity is that self-image that you have, like something that I'll talk about later with LGBTQ identity, but we all have an image of what we are in our brain. Like we all think this is me, and that's what identity is. Identity is how we see ourselves.
Yeah. I just said that like identity was personality just to put it in like layman's terms, make it simpler for people to understand it.
Yeah,
but yeah,
absolutely.
I think that is an important thing to touch, that identity is you. It's not what people think you are. It's not how you portray yourself. It is all up here,
Yeah, it's that
all
like
up here.
core of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
Wadi, what does it mean to like have an identity? Like, what's the difference between having an identity and not having an identity?
I think in the example, and in this anecdote I gave of someone who didn't have an identity, you can see like the repercussions of not having an identity. I think the one line I said about you need to find yourself before you find others is crucial. Um, we're all in high school, right? We're teenagers, and that's what you do with your time when you're a teenager. That's why, like, it's the most developmental period of your life. You go through all the changes such as puberty and stuff like that in your teenage years, and along with that, you find your own identity, right?
Mm-hmm. So,
So, oh, you go
sorry.
ahead. Go
I
ahead.
guess I guess what I would think to have an identity is to have like almost confidence in yourself.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like I don't think that if you're a super unconfident person that doesn't mean you have an identity, like you don't have one. But I think if you're a confident person that like shows that you have a strong idea of who you are,
Mhm.
I think having confidence and really being able to like express yourself through whatever medium you choose is a really big indicator that someone has an identity and that someone has an identity that they like. Because I think that's kind of an important differentiation is someone having an identity that they like and someone having an identity that they don't like.
Yes, and a lot of people. I was actually like, s- like researching on this. On is it relates to it? It's like how to change your personality.
Mm-hmm.
I'll bring it back in, but I was like researching it, and like a lot of like people who get stuck on like not being content with themselves and not feeling that they're not who they are, right? They don't portray themselves as who they truly are. Um, it comes down to two things, I believe. Oh yeah, two things. It's first is metacognition, and then the second is meta emotion, right? So those are big terms, but like I'll explain them. Metacognition is how you think about your thoughts, and meta emotion is how you feel about your emotions, right? So you'll see a lot of the time with people who get stuck in a place and feel like, oh man, I really wish I wasn't single. I really wish, I had better grades. I really wish I had this like better job or whatever, right? You'll see themselves, or you'll see those people who are stuck in those positions. They will dwell on what they feel and what they think.
Mm-hmm.
If your thoughts about your thoughts are not positive, you will not be content, right? So
Interesting.
finding your own identity is truly, um, I think confidence is a perfect word for it, as you said, right?
Yeah.
And you are someone who went through a completely like identity shift, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was honestly like very impressive and very like inspiring to see like your confidence shine through. And I want to ask like how you know what I mean, how did
How?
you build up that confidence to express who your true self is?
So I'm just gonna kind of tell the story of like how I knew about my identity and then how I decided to come out because I think that kind of encompasses your question. So I knew I wasn't a girl when I was in like sixth grade. I felt something deep inside me that was like, this isn't right. This isn't who I am. But I didn't have the words or like the meanings to express who I was. Because I've never heard of terms like transgender or non binary or gay.
Mhm.
I'd
Mhm.
never been like, no one had ever told me about that. I'd never been educated. So I just felt that I was fundamentally different, but I didn't know why. And that really made me kind of hate myself in a way. Like it really did a number to my self-confidence because I was in my brain I was like, man, I am not right. I'm not supposed to be like this and yet I am like this. Which is why I'm a really big supporter of having books about LGBTQ identities very early on in childhood because I think it's important for people like me to have those words to identify themselves at a very early age. Because if I had known what the term non binary was when I was in sixth grade, I never would have had such low self confidence in my middle school years because I would have been able to be me for a lot longer.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. I think that perfectly matches up with what I was saying earlier, right? Like when you're a child, like a young child, personality and identity is very one dimensional, right?
Mm-hmm.
You see this, an example of this is like kids go through phases, right? Like kids have a dinosaur phase or a Barbie phase or a train phase, whatever, right? And then as you get older, there's more like things that build up, almost like Legos, more
Mm-hmm.
things, and then it builds who you are. But if you don't have that like good foundation, it might come like crumbling down. And
Exactly.
with your case, as you started those developmental period of your life, which sixth grade, that's around the time you start puberty, you were like, hey man, this is not who I truly am, right? So I think that was very smart of you to identify that first of all.
Mm.
Yeah, good on you for
Thank you.
like expressing your true self.
So I came out the like Christmas season, holiday break of my freshman year. And I only came out then because I knew I was trans at the very beginning of my freshman year, because that's when I met my best friend in the entire world, who was the first transgender person I had ever really been close with. And this person is incredibly important to me. We are so, so close. And they kind of were like the first introduction of like, if you don't like, if you have a different image of who you are, like, become that image of what you want to be.
Hmm.
Like, they were the first person who had the confidence to transition, and that gave me the confidence to transition.
Yeah, yeah. There's a saying that I hate and completely disagree with. It's you become like who you hang out with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not true at all. That implies that other people uh influence you, right? But I think the thing is that other people can bring out the true you. It's
Mm-hmm.
always been you, but just sometimes you need that friend or like group, to just
Mm-hmm.
help you really bring out the
Yeah,
true self.
absolutely. And I think with my friend, it wasn't like I met them and all of a sudden I was like, maybe I'm trans. It was like I met them and it was like the word trans was introduced to me, and I was like, yes, that is me.
Hmm.
That's how I
Yeah.
identify. Because I've met
Yeah.
a lot of people who are like, oh, you were friends with someone who's trans? They made you trans. And I was like, no, I was born trans. I just didn't figure it out until I was older.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's my issue with like these like simplistic sayings like, oh, you become who you hang out with or whatever, right? Like it's just wrong.
Yeah, they're
you know
like, you are who you hang out with. Like, no, I'm me. Like,
exactly,
point
exactly.
blank.
They aren't changing you, they're just
Mm-hmm.
bringing out the true you, right?
Yeah. And if you have good friends, they bring out the best part of you. Like with my friend, they brought out the true meaning of myself. And if you have bad friends, they bring out that uglier side of you, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's kind of the beginning of my identity. And we'll go on and we'll talk a little bit later about LGBTQ identity in general, because I definitely have a lot of ideas on that. But
Mm-hmm.
Riyadh, I really want to know about your identity as kind of a person who, because I've seen you go through some changes too, especially over COVID. I met you as kind of this like shyish person, and you're like completely different now. And I really want to know how you kind of gained that confidence.
Yeah. I think for those that don't know, like I used to go by the nickname Wadi, Waadi, because I had like a speech impediment. I couldn't say my real name, Riyadh. I couldn't say R, so I'd say Wad, and then it just transformed into Wadi. So I used to be like, oh, I'm Wadi, right? Um, but now I've kind of only recently, I think, in the past, what, ever since July, I've been like, oh no, I'm Riyadh, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've made this transition, quote unquote, to Riyadh because I feel like I'm in a mental state where I have matured more, right? So I don't know why in my mind, like, Wadi is just someone entirely different from who Riyadh is. Like, Wadi is like a tiny, like, little insecure little baby, like, but Riyadh is like successful man, right? And
Honestly,
some
that. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, go you go ahead, you go ahead.
That relates to me when I changed my name. Like, I see my dead name as this, like, kind of gross person who I don't want to be. And my Ontario, my new name, is like me. So that really, like, your story of how you went from Wadi to Riyadh, like, it relates to a lot of people who have also changed their name.
Mhm. Yeah. Um I think that I was in a position of zero self-confidence. I was just like looking back, I would go through entire days of like school and just have my earbud in and like maybe socialize once or twice, but just like
Mm-hmm.
not muster up the courage to just be myself, right? And then the few times I would be myself, I would be like shunned. Um, there's an instance, but I'm not comfortable saying it because I
Mm-hmm.
know some people are listening. So, um, but yeah, I think being my true self was like really difficult, right? So I would just be like a turtle, just go in my shell, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I it wasn't. Hmm. I don't know what switched in me, but it was just I think honestly it coincided with my interest and my passion for a career in like neuroscience and psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And then with this information I was like taking in, I was like, wait, I should look at myself. I need to take a step back. And I looked at myself. I was like, wow, I'm like terrible. I need to fix myself. And I just did, right? And sometimes you do need that, like, sometimes you do need that switch, like just a simple, just like, oh, I'm gonna go by my real name now, to just really propel you
Mm-hmm.
into like confidence.
So your goals are kind of the big thing that drove your identity.
Um, yeah, for sure. Um, I think that just I'm I would define myself as like a hyper extrovert. So if I don't socialize with people, I'm just gonna like get depressed. But when I do socialize with people, I'm like fueled up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I was in this state of like not being uh social, and then I would be like depressed, right? So this also ties back into what I was saying, metacognition. How you and metacognition and meta emotion, how you think about your thoughts and how you feel about your emotions. I I would get frustrated with myself because of how I was feeling. I was getting anxious from the anxiety that I was feeling, right? And
Mm.
I think that something that a lot of people should really just do is just take a step back, just be like, control. You can't control what happens, right? You can't control, oh man, I'm feeling like anxious, right? You can't control that. But what you can control is how you reflect on that scenario and in that
Mm-hmm.
like circumstance, right? Oh, um, you can either think how I did was like, oh man, I'm so mad. Why am I not talking a lot? Or why am I not doing this? Why am I not doing that, right? Or you can have a more positive reflection on it, and that will lead to self improvement.
I saw this Instagram reel the other day that was like how to change your perspective. That was like, it was like taking the situation where it was like, I did so bad on this test, and instead thinking of it on as, how do I grow from this? How do I learn a lesson from this?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think changing your mindset is a huge step into building that confidence and finding your identity.
Yes, it for sure, for sure. Um, and for sure, it can be a struggle, and it's not like just like that, like overnight. It's like something that takes months, years, even
Mm-hmm.
decades for some people. Just to
Yeah.
find themselves.
Finding yourself is honestly, I think, one of the hardest things of the human, hardest parts of the human experience. Like, knowing who you are takes so much self reflection and vulnerability that some people just aren't comfortable with. Like, I know for me, like, I hate being vulnerable with anybody besides my therapist. Like, I hate
Mm-hmm.
being vulnerable,
Mm-hmm.
especially with myself. And so it took me forever to find, like, parts of my identity that weren't related to, like, my sexuality or gender identity because I just didn't want to explore anything.
Yeah, I think it's like an adventure, right? You gotta explore, you know. Um, I'm picturing like Indiana Jones, like in a temple. Oh wow, look, is that confidence over there? Oh my God, let me go get that. Wow, that's so valuable, you know.
What does the boulder
um,
represent?
the boulder represents your evil thoughts, you know, your negative metacognition and emotion, right? If you have those bad thoughts about your thoughts, and if you have those bad emotions about your emotions, it'll just topple everything over, right?
Right. We've made a great metaphor here,
Yeah,
personally, I
man, this is
think.
great. This is great, man. But yeah, I think there's a lot of things um outside of you, of course, that like influence you. Of course, number one thing being your parents, right? And
Mm-hmm.
your culture. Um, but yeah, I think that some people find that they need to reject their foundations, going back to the Lego brick analogy, right? Where like your personality is just a bunch of Lego bricks, right? Some people just like, when they take that step back, they say, "Hey, I have a terrible foundation. I'm going to change it," right? Or some people take a step back, say like, "Hey, I have a really good foundation, but like the top is like really wobbly and I need to change these past few years of my life," right? Um I think one of the big things is like, of course, parenting, and then also religion, right, and culture. So
Mm-hmm.
those are some things that are like a part of the foundation that
Mm-hmm.
really need to be identified before you can find your own identity.
Yeah, and I think that plays really well into what I wanted to talk about next is how you as a Muslim have found your identity and what it kind of means to have a religious identity.
Hmm. So I'm gonna be real. I'm very religious. I love my religion. Islam's pretty sick, man. It's pretty cool. It's pretty fire. Um, yeah. I think growing up, or I was fortunate enough to where my mom was a convert, so she found the religion, and because she found it like later in her life, she just like fell in love with it and she committed to it, right? She just committed to this lifestyle. And now look, she's great Muslim, great mom, right? But I think because that she was a convert and because of her love of religion, like it like projected onto me, and I'm like, she's showing me things that are like, that's crazy, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
um I think that a lot of the times religious identity is like projected onto children, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I've seen with, honestly, what I've seen with Islam is people get so focused on the rules of Islam. Don't eat pork, don't smoke, don't drink alcohol, don't do drugs, don't, whatever, right? People get so fed up on the rules that they don't look at everything else in the religion, the
Mm-hmm.
beauty of it, right? Like I think like the whole thing about like these rules are like one page in an 800 page Quran, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you read the other stuff? Why are you focusing on this stuff, you know? There's, for example, like there's like, I got like so mad the other day, or like a couple months ago actually, because I saw a video of like these two like Muslim kids like burning LGBTQ flags and like stomping on them, and their parents were supporting it, right? And I'm like, that's not what Islam is. Islam is like a religion of beauty and a religion of acceptance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like it's the teeniest tiny part where Allah's like, hey man, try not to be gay. You know what I'm saying? But if someone's gay, don't disrespect them. You know, Like, I know the Prophet, he had some like LGBTQ friends, right? You know, and the Prophet's wife also had some transgender friends, I believe, right? Like, it's the smallest part of the book, but people just blow it up, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
think that whenever these parents project these rules onto the children, they start rejecting the religion. They're starting to like despise it. And this is not like statistical or anything. This is not like factual, but what I've seen with my own like eyes, right, is a lot of Muslims my age are having these rules projected onto them, and they're breaking away from these rules, right? And they're
Mm-hmm.
becoming less and less religious, and they're not truly appreciating what Islam is, and their version of Islam is skewed, right?
Mm.
So I
I
think
think,
that may I finish just one more thing?
of course,
Uh,
absolutely.
I think that the thing is you have to find the religion yourself, not find it through your parents.
Mm-hmm. I think my idea of Islam has also kind of been skewed just because of how like racist America is towards Muslims.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like
That is a huge
Muslims
problem.
are portrayed as like terrorists and like haters of women and like horrible people. And so like
Andrew Tate.
precisely like I really didn't understand what Islam is until we read Persepolis last year.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that's a huge part of like maybe people not understanding Islam too. Like I had no idea what it is, and that's not because I'm like ignorant or anything. I mean, I am ignorant, but like I just Islam has been fed to Americans as like a dangerous quote unquote religion.
Mm-hmm. Um, the sad thing is, it is a danger. It's not a dangerous religion, but some people who follow it are dangerous. Like,
Mm-hmm.
literally yesterday, Israel declared war.
Mm-hmm.
Literally yesterday, right? And tension is not like going down. It's just rising ever since 9/11, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's just been there's been a spotlight of like hatred on Islam, and I'm glad that you pointed that out. I respect that, you know, that you point that out and you acknowledge that, hey man, Islam isn't bad, it's the people portraying it that is bad, right?
Absolutely.
Um yeah, there is a lot of hate, of course, because of like 9/11 and stuff, and the violence in the Middle East, in Asia. But I think Persepolis is great. It's literally what I was talking about, where these rules are projected onto these young Muslims, and then they start rejecting it. You can see that with what's her name, Marjane. You can see that with Marjane, um, towards the middle of the book when she starts like becoming a teenager, right? She
Mm-hmm.
like shaves her head. I think she has like earrings. She has like she has a mohawk. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, she's like being rebellious, right? But then towards the end of the book, she discovers Islam and then starts wearing hijab again. Really starts like finding Islam for herself
Mm-hmm.
and not through her parents, and that leads her to having a beautiful religious identity.
Our English teacher would be so proud of us right now.
Yeah, shout out to our English teacher, man. Um, what is your so my vision of Christianity is I think it's great. I think I love all
Mm-hmm.
religions. I love religions because or all I love all religions because even like the quote unquote like satanic religions or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're like devil worshippers. Religion is just a way to find yourself. So whatever religion it is, hey man, find happiness. You do you, man. You
Mm-hmm.
know. So what is your experience with the religion?
My experience with the religion is a little bit different than other people's because I am a PK, which is a pastor's kid, for people who don't know. My mom is a pastor. Um, my parents are of the Presbyterian sect of Christianity. So my own personal religion has. It's really. I don't know how to explain it because I have for the longest time just described myself as not religious because I'm really not that religious. But recently a new associate pastor came to our church, um, and she is this huge supporter of LGBTQ rights, and just she's super progressive, and she's the first like person in the church who I've ever felt like connected to. And I sat down with her and I talked to her for like 2 hours. We went to a tea shop, and like genuinely, she made me a little religious, like just for a 2 hour talk.
Hmm. I think that is amazing. I think you, just outsider looking in, this is literally what I'm talking about. You're discovering the religion for itself. You're not focusing on these tiny rules like, oh, don't be gay or whatever the Bible says, right? It's like a tiny thing that people blow up because of their own like phobias.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's a amazing thing that you're meeting with this person to find the religion for yourself.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, I would not describe myself as Christian. I think I believe in a creator, but I don't think I believe in the Christian God. I think I just believe that there's something out there.
Hmm. So you're still finding your own religion, and that's
Yeah.
completely fine to
Like,
be in this transitional period.
mm-hmm. My father teaches at a Catholic school, and I know that I definitely disagree with everything they say,
Oh.
because they're like actually the most homophobic group of people I've ever met.
Hmm. Um, hey, if I'm gonna be honest, I don't know too much about the differences between the different Christianities.
Yeah.
It's very convoluted, so
Mm-hmm. I got
please
you.
walk me through it.
So, different sects of Christianity usually differentiate themselves on how they do communion or how they do the order of worship. Like, if they have sessions, if they have elders, if they have deacons, which are like the leaders in the church who aren't the pastors. Some of the huge divide between Christianity and Catholicism is the Eucharist, which is basically, is the bread that you do communion with actually Jesus? Like, is it physically Jesus?
Hmm. So no, right? It's just
Catholics
bread.
believe that they are literally eating Jesus's body when they are eating the bread of communion,
Hmm.
which like made people really hate Catholicism because like cannibalism.
Hmm. This is to honor him, of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Because
yeah.
Jesus
Shout out
said like,
Jesus.
this is my body for you, and then the wine is my blood for you.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. So you completely disagree with that, as you said, right?
I completely disagree with that. I think when you eat communion, you're eating bread and drinking wine slash grape juice that is not special at all. You're just getting a little snack in the middle of church.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. Yeah. You can.
Which is,
I'm not gonna speak on it, but yeah, that you can have your own opinion. Is there a sect of Christianity or really any other religion that interests you?
yeah, actually, okay, there's this church called the is it Universalist? It's the UU Church. It's the Universalist Unitarian Church. And they basically represent all religions. So instead of reading exclusively
Hmm.
from the Bible, they'll read from the Bible, they'll read from the Quran, they'll read from like poems that have nothing to do with religion, that are about like nature or something.
So they're just taking like the best parts of each religion
Mm-hmm.
and just highlighting them. That's really great.
So what they're doing is they're like bringing together all of these people. So like if you and I both went to a UU church, like we'd hear parts of both of our religions, and we'd have like middle ground.
Hmm. Hmm. And I do think that it is important, like as a society, that we need to have that middle ground. I know Islam, it is, oh, I forget the Arabic word for it, but there is a word worse than haram. Like there are things that if you do them, like God will be like, yo, you are in big trouble, right? So
Like, yeah.
one of the things is disrespecting other religions, because
Interesting.
we need that foreground, that middle ground. to function as a society?
I would think it'd be like murder, not disrespecting other religions.
I don't know if Islam is a lot about intention. So,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm just gonna straight up say I'm not knowledgeable enough on this topic. So please, I won't continue. But I just know that like that's one of the worst things you can do is disrespect another religion, especially Abrahamic religions, right? Like Christianity and Islam, right? Because they do have like sacred text in them. There is stuff that is Islam is trying to highlight that everything has beauty. All these religions have beauty. It's just slightly different, right?
That's really cool, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
Because a big part of Christianity is like, I'm right, you're wrong.
Mhm. Mhm. And
So I
if you're
think it's
wrong, you go to hell.
exactly like, I've always thought like missionaries are very flawed because you're basically
Wait,
forcing other people and other
excuse
cultures.
me. Sorry to interrupt, but missionaries are the people that knock on your door, right? And they say, "Hey, convert," or
The
something.
You're thinking of Mormons.
Oh, wait. What are missionaries?
Missionaries are people who usually go to. You remember when we read Things Fell Apart?
Yes.
The missionaries are the white people who came to the Africa and were like forcing people to convert and like putting them in jail.
Oh, so it's like a forceful.
Yeah, usually it's forceful. Um, Not all the time. My grandfather was a missionary. He went to Africa. He definitely wasn't forceful. If you met him, he would never be forceful. But I've always thought it's been flawed where like people go and they go to a different culture and you're like, you have to convert to this.
Yeah, there's room for exploitation
Mm-hmm.
and self gain, right? Like your grandfather, you say like is like someone who like is honest, right? I assume, but
Mm-hmm.
then there's also I can imagine missionaries who use that title to exploit for their own personal gain and fulfillment,
Absolutely.
right? Yeah. So I can understand why you believe it's flawed. I think something that I want to go deeper into is like we've both been highlighting that both of our religions, like the tiniest part of it is like, oh, don't be LGBTQ, but then people blow it up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how in a Christian household did you find your own identity, your LGBTQ identity, while maintaining a relationship with your family?
Well, straight up, I didn't tell them for a while. I came out to my parents as the very last people I came out of because I was terrified that they would say, no, this is against my religion.
Yeah, and that's honestly, yeah, that's like reasonable to think.
Mm-hmm. I I came out the day after Christmas. I came out December 26th of 2021 because I wanted
Mm-hmm.
my Christmas presents. Because if my parents rejected me, I still wanted my Christmas presents. That was my logic.
Wait, what did you get? Do you remember?
No.
Oh.
It wasn't anything important. I think it was like a scarf or something.
I like where your priorities are at.
Like, I was like, you can reject me. I just want my Christmas presents.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All about the presents.
It's for real.
Yeah.
um, Go ahead.
So this is something I've always wondered, but like immediately after like coming out, do you just immediately sense like weight off your shoulders, or is it like more gradual?
It depends on. I came out twice. I came out as a lesbian and then I came out as trans. When I came out as a lesbian, it was weight off my shoulders because I was much more confident that my parents would be supportive of me because I have a lesbian aunt. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I knew they were already comfortable with her, so they'd be comfortable
Mm-hmm.
with me. There's no one in my family who's trans, so I was kind of quote unquote the guinea pig. When I came out as trans and I was like, I am changing my name, that's when I felt a lot more weight on my shoulders because I was like, we're gonna have to we're gonna have to
Do some
work.
changing around
We're
here.
gonna have to do some work on this because
Yep.
you guys are gonna mess up and you guys might purposely dead name me and I'm going to have to correct you.
So it was like you had a sense of like prepare. You have to prepare for what's to come. Excuse me, I have hiccups.
No, you're good. It was like when I came out as trans, it felt like the first step in a long journey. When I came out as gay, it felt like the last step because there's nothing more to it. You just say you're gay.
So it's not just like, there's not one textbook formula. It's very dependent on what you feel in your
Absolutely.
situation.
And coming out is different for every single person. Like, my experience is totally different from somebody else because it's such a personal thing to come out. Like, you cannot define universally what coming out is because it's different for every single LGBTQ person.
Yeah. So, so like, how do you have that conversation? Like, if I'm sure there's someone like listening who's like going through this right now, like, how do you have that conversation?
What I did is I first came out to my brother because I love my brother, and he's also the kind of person who just doesn't care about anything.
Oh, okay.
I
So
knew
he'd be
his
like, oh, okay.
Like, his reaction was literally, okay, cool. Like, and I kind of needed that because you're so worried about what the reaction's gonna be. When you don't get a reaction, it's relieving.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, Actually, you continue. This is reminding me of something. I'll get back to it though.
Okay. So I came out to my brother first, and then I was gonna come out. I was ready to come out to my family. It was December 26th. We got Chinese food, and I remember this distinctly. We got Chinese food. I opened my fortune cookie, and my fortune says, "Good things will come to people if you talk to them." And I was like, okay, my fortune says today's the day. I still have that fortune cookie fortune somewhere.
Oh, that's nice that you kept it.
I did keep it. And so I have a recording of it on my phone. I recorded it. I said, "Mom and Dad, can we just sit down and talk?" And I immediately burst into tears. And I was like, this is what's going to happen. And my mom was like, "Yay, good for you, Ontario. We'll be there and support you." And my dad kind of just sat there silently. And my dad supporting me has been a journey in its own. But my mom has always been very supportive of me.
Wow, well, I'm glad that you were able to do that, and you mustered up the confidence for that. Yeah.
I thank Chinese food for that.
Yeah. Shout out Chinese food. Shout out orange chicken. You know what I'm saying? Shout out lo mein. But what it reminded me of was you were like, oh yeah, I'm so scared of what people's emotion or reactions are gonna be. And it reminded me of this thing in Buddhism, I believe. It's the two arrows. So the whole thing is that you're shot by two arrows. The first one is the arrow of like life, right? This is the one that you can't control. This is like, oh man, this happened. It's out of my control, right? Like, oh, you get like, I don't know, bad grade, or something like that. Or like, just life, something throws at you, right? And then there's the arrow that you shoot yourself with. This is the arrow that is like, oh man, this is the negative emotions and thoughts that can come from the first arrow, right? If you are shot with the first arrow and you're like, oh my god, I'm gonna die, everything's terrible, then you're gonna die. If you're shot with the first arrow and have a more positive and a more positive outlook, then you're gonna be like, okay, I need to heal myself from this arrow, right? And I think that relates because like you need to have that control of yourself because you can't control others, And I think that you just talking to your brother reminded me of that.
Yeah. Shout out my brother. Love you.
Baller. No. Man, I think that's all I have to say about identity.
Me too, honestly. I think this has been a fantastic episode.
Truly. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening.
Yeah, I hope our episode brings you some solace if you are struggling with your identity right now. I hope we've maybe been able to help you out a little bit.
Yep. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah.
Goodbye. Have a good
We'll
day.
catch you next time. See ya.